Assalamu
Yeah.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome all. Inshallah, I will be moderating this week's section, which is a continuation of what our esteemed guests have talked about in the last week about the La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumeet biyadihi al-khayr wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So in the tafsir of this, we are at the fourth phrase. I believe the beginning has been discussed a little bit, but I'll inshallah read through that, and then there's a few more depth into sections. So inshallah we will go deeper into the first section inshallah after that. I'll start inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The fourth phrase, Lahul Mulk. His is the dominion. That is, every creature from the face of the earth to the divine throne, from the ground to the Pleiades, from the minutest particles to the heavenly bodies, everything from pre-eternity to post-eternity, the heavens and the earth, this world and the hereafter belongs to him. His is the highest degree of ownership in the form of the greatest affirmation of divine unity, Tawhid al-Azam. A mighty proof of this was imparted to this powerless one's mind in Arabic at a pleasant time in pleasant circumstances. For the sake of that pleasant memory, we shall note down those same phrases, then write their meanings. His is the dominion, because the macrocosm is similar to the microcosm. What is fashioned by his power is a missive expressing his determining. His creating the macrocosm makes it the place of prostration, while his giving of existence to the microcosm makes it as prostrating. His bringing the former into being makes it as a property, while his giving of existence to the latter makes it as owned. His art in the former displays it as a book, while his coloring in the latter shines through speech. His power in the former reveals his majesty, while his mercy in the latter arrays his bounty. His majesty in the former testifies that he is one, while his bounty in the latter proclaims that he is single, undivided. His stamp on the former is on all things universal and particular, while his seal on the latter is on the body and on the limbs. So again, I think we have a good discussion last week with other brothers and all the guests last week. So inshallah, we will read also the first section and then inshallah ask our guests for their comments. The first section, the macrocosm is similar to the microcosm. What is fashioned by his power is a missive expressing his determining, his qadr. That is to say, so the explanation of this sentence is to follow. That is to say, the macrocosm, which is called the universe, and the microcosm, which is its miniature specimen and is called man, point to evidences of divine unity, both within man's self and outside it, that are written by the pens of divine power and divine determining. There is within man the sample on a very small scale of the orderly art which is in the universe, and as the art that is present in the vast sphere testifies to the single maker, so the microscopic art which is on a tiny scale in man points to the maker and demonstrates his unity. Moreover, as man is a meaningful missive inscribed by his sustainer and a well-composed ode written by divine determining, so is the universe a well-composed ode written by that same pen, but on a vast scale. Is it at all possible that anything other than the single one of unity could have a hand in placing the stamp of uniqueness on man's faces, which, although they resemble one another, all have their distinguishing marks, and have a hand in setting the seal of unity on the universe, all of whose creatures cooperate, helping and supporting one another. Could anything interfere in this? This is the first section. I think there's the universe, macrocosm, the human being, microcosm, and I think there is some implications or some reference to the Wahidiyya and Ahadiyya and differences in them and explaining the divine unity. So, but of course, I would like to turn to our guests, inshallah. Maybe Mustafa Altunkaya, we will start with you, with your thoughts about this part, especially the first section between the microcosm and macrocosm, and how we should understand these in understanding the Lahul Mulk.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you very much, Mustafa, for reading this section. I mean, what I understood shortly is Ustad is clarifying the point of Tawhid from two different aspects in the first section. The Tawhid, which is, we see it like in the larger scale in the universe, which is the macrocosm. And also we see the Tawhid in the microcosm, which is like a small miniature universe, like a human being. So when Allah is showing his power from a larger scale, let's say in the stars, sun, Milky Way, similarly within our body also we see the unlimited source of power is needed, and his wisdom and things like that. So I think this, as you said, Wahidiyya and Ahadiyya perspective, when we are looking in the larger scale, there is a chance that we could be, getting lost because it's quite massive. Everything is pointing to him, but at the same time, we could get stuck in the many details. However, when we look at internally in a small scale within us, which is the Anfusi world, it might be easier, the scale which we have it, to comprehend from the perspective of Ahadiyya. Because the Ahadiyya is, Allah is showing also his manifestation of his oneness, his power, and from that we could also comprehend it, inshallah. So in this scale, Allah is also showing a perfect art, as it says in the second paragraph of the first section. I mean, the art present in human body is not is not like, lower grade than the whole universe. It is actually like quite impressive when we look at in the, doctors when they're exploring the human body and things like that. So microscopic art, which is in a tiny scale, is also pointing to Allah and demonstrate also his unity, his Tawhid. So this meaningful points is always pointing towards the sustainer, which is Allah, and well-composed order. And Allah is using also the divine pen, which is the destiny, and giving everything in the right amount to the universe, and also the little universe, which is the human being. Shortly, these things come to my mind, but when we look at from two perspectives, I mean, who could be the one who has a control of everything other than Allah, like a single one of unity? If we have multiple things which is controlling, always there will be a clashes and the problems, and I don't think like it will be a harmony in the universe and in the human being, if someone doesn't accept the Tawhid of Allah, you know. These are, Mustafa, shortly what comes to my mind, and I would like to also hear from Colin Abi if he's available.
Yeah. Khalil Hocam, what are your thoughts, especially like the complementary nature of the names of Wahidiyya and Ahadiyya, and like why would we need these two types of testament to divine unity? One is on the universal scale, one is on the microscopic or the human scale. I mean, why do we need both?
Assalamu alaikum. I can't really add very much to Mustafa Hoja's very comprehensive and eloquent opening remarks. Although I would say, not with respect to what he said, but this idea that Ahad and Wahid are addressing different perspectives. Well, they are, but Ahad and Wahid work both on the microscopic and the macroscopic level. But before we go there, I think it's important that Mustafa started with making a distinction between Ahad and Wahid, because what we tend to do as Muslims, we tend to take Tawhid as a doctrinal issue that doesn't need discussion. We say God is one. Everyone knows this. It's kind of a mantra that people repeat. If you say, what is Tawhid? People will say, well, God is one. But we rarely step beyond that. And what Ustad is showing us here is a method of looking and understanding and comparing, actually looking at the creation and seeing how much it chimes with our own existence. You know, the afaq and the anfus, the outer world, the horizons, and the inner world of the human being are complementary, not just because of Ahad and Wahid. The fact that we can understand the creation shows that we are created by the same creator. Something that is seen needs eyes, okay? Something that is tasted needs a tongue. So wherever we look in the creation and wherever we compare with our own being, we see that all of our needs, all of the things that we have in us which need to be fulfilled, can be fulfilled by the creation. And that can only happen if their source is the same. So this seems very straightforward, but as Muslims, unfortunately, as a collective, we've forgotten the adab of Tawhid, which is to see Tawhid absolutely everywhere and to understand how it works. And Ahad and Wahid are very good examples of what we need to do to transcend just this doctrinal acceptance of Tawhid without moving further beyond that. Ahad is to do with uniqueness or unicity. Wahid is to do with inclusivity. So when you look at a single rose, and you realize the harmony and beauty and all of the other perfections that are in that rose, you say that this can only be created by one unique creator, because this rose is unique. And then when you see roses in someone else's garden, you see that there are similarities. You realize that the creator of the rose in my garden and the creator of the roses in the other garden is one and the same, and that is Wahidiyya. Now, this is not a theological issue as such. I mean, technically, it's very simple. Ahad shows us that everything is unique, and that means that Allah is here present in this very moment, creating, because everything is unique, absolutely everything. And Allah is Wahid, meaning that everything that you see is created by the same creator. Now, what do these things prevent us from doing? What does knowledge of Ahad and Wahid prevent us from doing? Knowledge of Ahad prevents us from thinking that, oh, well, the creator just started the ball rolling and then, you know, the ball carried on by itself and was self-sustaining, self-maintaining. Ahad means that no, everything is unique, therefore the creator is creating it all of the time, continuously. Wahid means that there are not multiple creators, so we shouldn't attribute different creations to different creators. So Ahad and Wahid have to be understood together. It's no good just saying God is one, because otherwise we can fall into a lot of traps. And that's what we've done, basically, collectively. We've lost the adab of Tawhid, as a community, unfortunately. And Ustad was aware of this. This is why he wrote the Risale-i Nur. This is why the Risale-i Nur is clearly a work of tajdeed. There is no other thing like it. There is no other work that puts such emphasis on the importance of understanding what Tawhid is, not just as a doctrinal statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jam. And that's really great explanation of both Ahad and Wahid as two distinctive but complementing concepts. So that's great. Inshallah, I would like to maybe start reading the second section, but then I would like to ask after that and to our contributors but how we should tie these back to Lahul Mulk, the owner, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the owner of everything. But inshallah, let me read through the second section, and inshallah, we can try to tie that too. Unless Brother Mustafa has something to contribute before we start. Mustafa, anything from you?
Mustafa, just to add also example to differentiate Ahad and Wahid, Ustad is giving an example of the sun, because to comprehend the sun features or attributes, so it has a reflection of the sun on all of the bubbles and the ocean and the seas. So if we get all of the water on the surface of the world, we could get some idea about the attributes of the sun. But at the same time, when we take a small example like a one drop of seawater and look at the attributes like the 7 colors of the sunlight or the heat and the shininess and the other things, which we could also get the same attribute properties. So I think like in one small scale, we have a good understanding. But when we try to search everything which sun has a reflection, that's more comprehensive. I mean, it's quite difficult compared to the small one. So in a similar way, like in our laboratory analysis, also we tell the people, get something small sample as a homogeneous, which is representing the whole sample, so that we can focus on that and make it that one as a unit of measurement to understand in a larger scale. So this was one of the examples Ustad gave us. So just want to add that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. That's really helpful in terms of our level of understanding and how we can go. Inshallah, I'll read through the second section and then get back to inshallah those again to the question about how we connect these to Lahul Mulk. Second section, his creating the macrocosm makes it as a place of prostration, while his giving of existence to the microcosm makes it as prostrating. It has this meaning: the all-wise maker created the macrocosm in such a novel, wonderful form, inscribing on it the signs of his grandeur, that he transformed it into a mighty mosque. And he created man in this way, giving him intellect, giving him intellect, and causing him to prostrate in wonderment with it at those miracles of his art and at his wondrous power. He caused him to read the signs of his grandeur, thus girding him ready for worship in that mighty mosque. He created him as a prostrating slave. Is it at all possible that the true object of worship of those prostrating worshippers in this mighty mosque could be other than the one single maker? So this is the second section about the prostration in the macrocosm and microcosm. And again, I would like to also ask, since we are covering Lahul Mulk, Allah being the owner of everything, how we can connect this. Maybe Khalil Najam, should we start with you about this things prostrating to Allah?
Yeah, if you wish. I just want to say though that Mustafa's explanation of Ahad and Wahid was excellent, and much briefer than mine and much more eloquent. It's a brilliant way of looking from the other side, starting with Ahad and Wahid and then looking for examples of it. But anyway, that's a digression. We know that Kullul Ard Masjidullah, right? The whole of the Ard, the earth, is a masjid, basically. It is prostrate, in a sense. It is submitted. Everything is submitted to Allah in the universe. Where the distinction comes in between a place of prostration and prostrating is that humankind is the only creature who can imagine that he is not submissive or should not prostrate. He can choose not to prostrate. Although even in his choice not to prostrate, he is prostrating but doesn't really know it. So, the masjid is prostrate as it is. It doesn't have a will in that sense, in the way that human beings have. Human beings are created to prostrate because when you see that everything else has already prostrated or is prostrate, then you realize, if you understand that you are part of the cosmos and that you function interdependently with the rest of the cosmos, you realize that submission is the default setting of the cosmos. In other words, submission is the name of the game, right? And therefore, human being, taw'an wa karhan, whether he likes or not, will prostrate. And it's much, much better, of course, if we choose to prostrate. So prostration or submission is basically what the universe is created out of. We are created this way. The universe is created in that way. The universe is mazhar. We are also mazhar, but we can also be muzhir. There's a difference. Mazhar, place of manifestation. Muzhir, one who manifests or one who chooses to manifest. And I think in the whole of the Risale, I think muzhir is used only once, strangely enough. I may be completely wrong about that. And mazhar is everywhere, but muzhir, I've only seen one instance of it. But it fits in obviously with what Ustad is saying here. We are created in a way to worship. We are created, from our head to our toe with needs, with du'as, which make us call out to him all of the time. So yeah, that's my initial impression. Thank you.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. Thank you. This is very great. This act of prostration, whether we realize it or not, I think is really an important thing to notice here. I agree. I would like to read a comment in the chat from Fatabe. He says, "It is as if universe was created for humans and humans are created for the universe. This harmony shows that the owner, creator of the universe is the same as the creator, owner of the humans." I think he also connects it to the ownership concept here. Thank you, Fatabe, on this. Mustafa abi, any follow-on to this, inshallah, from your side?
I think your question, how we are gonna link this one with the ownership concept, because if we think, let's say, there is a product, a car, Mercedes, and it has certain features and characters which is showing that this car belongs to this manufacturer. So if there is a stamp on every part of the car and we could see it, we can link this one to the owner. So kind of, in the first section, which we look at from Wahid and Ahad, whether you take this single screw of the car or the whole car you are seeing, it's pointing to the same manufacturer. And in here, when we look at from, let's say, Allah is creating this universe in a most beautiful way, and he's Sani and Hakim. So he's the artist of this palace, of this great masjid, but he uses also his wisdom. He is Hakim. So in order to solve the puzzle of the ownership of who has the artist, I mean, who is the artist of all the arts in this masjid, or who is the one which is making all the great wisdoms behind like every pieces of stone or the coloring and things like that. So Allah give a tool to a human being. Ustad says here, he's the mind, I mean, our intelligence. And we need to look at the amazing arts of the Allah and the universe. And then we should be shocked because there is a great power Allah is using. There's an excellent art over there. So once we see this great art and excellence in this place, because everything is also doing its own job, doing their own job is like their ibadah and worshiping to Allah. So also it turns to us that we should also show the perfect worshiping, because this worship of everything is doing in the same masjid is also pointing to Allah, because all of these things are going to him. He's the owner. This is, I think, another stamp of the universe, which is showing that everything is owned by Allah. So this is one point. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Jazakallah khair. Thank you. This is actually very helpful in tying this concept back to the ownership. So before we go on to the third section, I would like to see if there are other insights about these two sections from our other guests, our volunteer speakers who are out there who would like to contribute. I've seen Fatabi contribute in the chat. If other brothers are willing to also speak up about anything, any insights, please feel free to do so. If not, I will inshallah go to the third section. I guess Rajab Abi. Yeah, okay, you're unmuted.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, in fact, it is sometimes good to see the world from others' perspectives, because it also gives us some ideas why they see the world like this one. So the development of all sciences, in fact, are because of our desire to understand the world, which is otherwise impossible to understand with our naked eyes. Because of that, we developed our sciences and we developed many different methodologies. So human understanding, even so, human understanding is very limited. And we have problems with understanding the whole thing, and they become very enigmatic for us when we don't understand. Another point is that when knowledge, we got some knowledge somehow in our minds, that does not come in the form of knowledge only. I mean, it also arouses some feelings inside us, like astonishment, maybe fear, maybe respect. I mean, many other things they are capable, the knowledge is capable of arousing, and it also makes up our character. Knowledge is not very simple thing, in fact. So among all of these things, the deeds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are so vast that it is mostly impossible by the human intellect to understand. For that reason, they get stuck to pantheism, similar ideas, because they only can rationalize everything in that way. So, because human mind is somehow only capable of understanding in that way. So, other than these methodologies, in fact, the divine names teach us how to think and how to see the world. I mean, how to narrow down our vision to understand. Because I mean, the methodology, in fact, is the narrowing down your vision to understand it, or analyzing it, dividing it into the pieces. So among these things, in fact, religion puts in front of us some things. I mean, like a priori knowledge. I mean, without questioning, if you start from there, you may understand it much better way. And I think this ahadiyat, the understanding this, the divine name ahadiyat, just points to that thing, because I mean, otherwise, really, human intellect is very difficult, really very difficult to see one God that created the world, because the deeds are so vast and ununderstandable, incomprehensible for human mind. For that reason, it is really very good thing, in fact, for us to start thinking, just putting these names in front of us and getting our extractions out of the universe. For instance, the brothers here also share their ideas just about these points. They express their own ideas. I mean, pointing to a hadiyat idea. Otherwise, I mean, if we are not somehow, I mean, if there weren't these seeds in our mind, I mean, thinking that way, we wouldn't produce these things very easily. And this ahadiyat is also a kind of feeling that we can also have. I mean, more than the intellectual struggle. In fact, some of the divine names of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala are not understandable through intellect. I mean, impossible to understand through intellect, and because of that, the signs of these divine names are put inside us. I mean, when you think of ahadiyah, I mean, you can stand up and then just look at yourself. I mean, you can see that you are one, you are ahad, in fact, I mean, in this sense, and you can, in this way, rationalize that there is only one who created the universe. Otherwise, I mean, it is quite difficult to understand these things. We are, maybe we were brought up in this culture, and we can rationalize. Otherwise, these things are really impossible.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Indeed, yeah. Thank you very much, Jawabi. It's actually very enlightening, and you know, the way you put it, also supporting what Mustafa has said in the initial part about comprehending, the ability to comprehend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making things easier for us by different types of manifestations, so that we are not lost in any one name, but are able to comprehend all of them through different perspectives. Jazakallah khair for that comment. So inshallah, I will read third section, and you know, it's like a couple pages in this format, and then inshallah we can go back to more comments in the interest of time. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Third section is bringing the former into being, former meaning the macrocosm. His bringing the former into being makes it as a property, while his giving of existence to the latter, meaning microcosm, while his giving of existence to the latter makes it as owned. It has this meaning: the glorious Lord of all dominion created the macrocosm, and especially the face of the earth, so that it resembles countless concentric circles or spheres. Every sphere is like an arable field, where minute by minute, season by season, century by century, he sows, reaps, and harvests crops. He continuously administers his property and works it. He has made the world of minute particles, the largest sphere, into a field. With his power and with his wisdom, he unceasingly sows crops in it to the extent of the universe. and reaps and harvests them. He dispatches them from the manifest world to the world of the unseen, from the sphere of power to the sphere of knowledge. Next, he has made the face of the earth, which is a medium sphere, a place of cultivation in exactly the same way, where season by season he plants worlds, species, and reaps and harvests them. His immaterial crops too, he sends to the immaterial worlds, to the worlds of the unseen and the hereafter and the world of similitudes. A garden too, which is a smaller sphere, he fills hundreds and thousands of times with power and empties with wisdom. And from the even smaller sphere of an animate creature, a tree or a human being, for example, he harvests crops that are 100 times greater than the being itself. That is to say, the glorious Lord of all dominion creates all things, great and small, universal and particular, as models, and clothes them in hundreds of ways in the weavings of his art, which are embroidered with continuously renewed inscriptions. He displays the manifestations of his names, the miracles of his power. He has created everything in his property as a page. He writes meaningful letters in hundreds of ways on each page. He displays his wisdom, his signs, and he invites intelligent creatures to read them. In addition to bringing the macrocosm into being in the form of a cultivated property, he has created man and has given him such tools and abilities, senses, feelings, and especially such a soul, such desires, needs, appetites, greed, and claims, that in that extensive property, he is like a totally owned creature who is in need of all of it. Is it therefore at all possible that anything apart from the glorious Lord of all dominion, who makes everything from the vast world of minute particles to a fly, is a field and cultivated property, and makes insignificant man a spectator, inspector, dealer, merchant, herald, worshipper, and slave in that vast property, and takes him as an honored guest and beloved addressee of himself? Could anything other than him have free disposal over the property and be lord over the totally owned slave? It's a long part, but inshallah it was clear. But inshallah I will let our guests speak about it. Maybe Mustafa, should we turn to you this time?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Bismillah. So in this section is also a third section. I mean, what it reminds me also, I think it's a link with the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim mysteries. So we are looking in the universe, which is Alam-i Akbar. And when Ustad is saying that there is circles within circle, so the biggest circle is like a Alam-i Akbar. And then Ustad says, especially the face of the earth, and Allah is creating the first face of the earth. And also within the earth, we have many little circles. But at each time, minute by minute, season by season, or centuries by century, if we consider each circle as a field, and Allah is bringing the mahsulat, which is like harvesting, he's collecting things from out of each from circle. He shows that the owner is his, because whoever owns the farm, he's the farmer, he's the owner, whatever is the property and the outcome. So when also Ustad is mentioning within the biggest, let's say, harvesting location is the world of the atoms, or zarrat alami, because that's particles, atoms, and everything is composed of from these little things. But if we consider this one as a huge farm, Allah is collecting a huge mahsulat. What is that? One example. So we know from the first word that everything is in the universe act as in the name of Allah. They say Bismillah, it's a zikr, the mahsulat. So every atom says this, and every human being says this also from our, body, as from the atoms also we are composed of. And as Allah is also showing with His power and the wisdom, He is sowing and is, let's say, giving a shape, and He takes the harvesting out of these things. So when we look at from the perspective of atoms, so it goes from, Isa says, Alam-i Shahadat, the visible world, into the Alam-i Ghaib, the unseen. And he's using also from the Daire Kudret, the sphere of the power, into the sphere of the knowledge. So it's going from one location to other one, which leaving the harvesting behind. So when also Ustad says on the following sentence, the face of the earth, this is the mutawassit circle, it is also like a field, and in each season we are seeing that all these bounties are being sent. There is let's say, a visible things coming, but out of this harvesting also, when a human being which is believing in Allah eats, they say Alhamdulillah. The ukhravi mahsulat, the thing which goes to the akhirah, is also being harvested, and the other one, in order to make, let's say, a little bit more smaller scale, Ustad also give an example of the garden. So in someone's garden, let's say 1 acre, 2 acre, the trees, apple trees, cherry trees, whatever we consider it, Allah is also using His power and the wisdom to produce all of the fruits out of it. And also when we look even in a smaller scale, a one tree or a human being, mahsulat, is also pointing maybe 100 times Allah is the Maliku Mulku Zul Jalal, whether it's a small scale in the aspect of ahadiyya or in a bigger scale from the perspective of wahidiyya, juz or kul, it doesn't matter. Allah makes everything as a model. He is creating constantly in hundreds of times with the fresh patterns, and He decorates. If we can see the pattern, whether in the tree, in the human being, in the garden, or in the atoms world, we should understand that this is the property of Allah. He is the complete owner. So one thing, if it's like a one line, another thing is maybe like a one page and the one book, and it goes like circle within circle. I think this is also another very strong statement from Ustad, is showing whether in the Alam Zarrat, the world of the atoms, from the fly or to the sky, everything is showing the Allah's ownership. This is what I understood from this section, Mustafa.
Jazakallah khair. This is very comprehensive summary of the section. It was very enlightening. Thank you very much, Mustafa. Colin Ajam, any insights onto these?
I can't I can't better what Mustafa has just said. Actually, I mean, it was so comprehensive. But this section that you read is so rich. And when you started reading it, we had 20 minutes left. I don't think this is something that you could really describe and understand and deconstruct and digest in 20 months, maybe even 20 years, because it's so rich, so concise. In every sentence that he writes, there is a book. So it's very, very reductive to expect us to be able to comment on it. I mean, Mustafa did a really good job, and I can't equal that. To try to actually say anything about this section, I think three things I wanted to point out. The the first was if you can go down to where he talks about the world of, is it particles? I think it's before that on the first page. Yes, he has made the world of minute particles the largest sphere into a field. The world of minute particles is the interface between mulk and malakut. And as quantum mechanics and quantum physicists will tell us, it's an apparently indeterminate world that is impossible to understand properly because it defies our ability to fathom things in a linear fashion. Things are appearing and disappearing apparently randomly, and we know that there is no randomness actually in the creation. But the way that Allah works on that level, and I'm not going to say that's the microcosmic level, because human being is a microcosm, but on the subatomic level, Allah's sunnah is very, very different in many ways to the sunnah that we see in Alam al-Mulk. And that shows us that actually he is the creator, because if it were more, how do you say, uniform, then it would be very easy to say, as we often do, oh yes, we are all made out of atoms, and the atoms do this and the atoms do that. And we think of atoms in terms of, you know, little snooker balls, little billiard balls. And actually, they're not like that at all. Those are just the ways that we've described them erroneously in the past. So the subatomic world is a very, very different world. And it shows that there can only be one Malik, because what comes out of it, as we experience, is this Alam al-Mulk. You know, from Alam al-Malakut comes Alam al-Mulk. Ontologically, Malakut is prior. And out of it, we see Alam, and actually Ustad says here, things moving from the manifest world to the world of the unseen, and the other way around. From the world of the unseen, things come to the world of the seen, all the time. So there is this kind of exchange. So that was the first thing. I mean, this chimes in very well with quantum physics. Also, I want to go back to what our dear brother Rajab said. I don't know whether he's still here, but he was talking about, you know, things being very, very difficult to understand for us intellectually. This is because I think, and there's something very sad about this, the scientific revolution, in order for it to happen, human beings had to sort of fall a second time, you know, as our grandfather Adam alayhi salam fell. And as we all fall, the whole of humanity fell, actually, in order for the scientific revolution to take place. Because for us to be able to look at the universe more or less objectively as something that is an object of study, we have to separate ourselves from it. We have to divorce ourselves from it to a certain extent. And this is what happened with the scientific revolution. And this was only enabled by our strengthening our rational intellect, to the detriment of our intuitive intellect. We have two kinds of intellect. One is ratio, rational intellect, and the other is the intellect of the heart, which is intuition. We had to separate ourselves and see the universe as something out there, and we're not part of it. We are observers. And of course, that's false. It's a false understanding. But this is what happened with Galileo. It's what happened with Newton. It's what continued to happen. And this is why the scientific revolution was possible. So all I wanted to say was, in response to Rajab, was that, yes, it's very difficult for us to understand God's deeds because they're so vast. But that is because we, in the process of this scientific revolution, we have lost touch with our intuitive intellect. We concentrate almost exclusively on our rational intellect, which sees things in a linear fashion, which understands things, which solves problems in a linear fashion. And that's why we have not been able, or we are, it's very difficult for us to understand that all of these things that we see in the universe are belonging to the same owner. I can't remember what the third thing was I was going to say, so I'll just stop it there. Thank you.
Okay, maybe someone else wants to chime in with their insights onto this, as Naja remembers the third thing that might be useful. But it's indeed interesting where we have this analogy of a field in all the circles, or it's like a factory, and there's certainly a production at all times, a harvest, and seeing it as such is definitely the ability to see is as such is unique to humans as well, and human beings themselves is also like a factory, but it is indeed quite a thing to comprehend for anyone. But alhamdulillah, there are these explanations, and we are reminded of these, and these are also reminding us of Allah being the owner of everything. So alhamdulillah, we have these. I would like to at least read through 4th section, because I was trying to time, as might be clear, I was trying to time this section at least to read through 4 sections, so that next week we can cover the rest. If there are no other comments or insights, I would like to do that.
There's something in the chat, I think, isn't there?
Oh, there's that. Okay, I missed that. Assalamu alaikum. Can we relate this macro and micro universe to Anfusi and Afaqi types of thinking? Cool. Thoughts on that? Maybe Mustafa Abi, would you like to jump on that? Is the relation between macro and micro universes here to Anfusi and Afaqi types of thinking, tafakkur, reflection?
I think yes, definitely it's relevant, because Anfusi is our internal, which is looking like as a human being in a small scale, how we can use ourselves to understand Allah as a unit of measurement. And Afaqi is the whole universe, which there are samples also around us from a larger scale to understand as a unit of measurement, how is, who is Allah. I think both ways, yeah. The micro is referring to Afaqi type of thinking, and the micro is the Anfusi, which is in a small scale. Yeah, thank you very much. It's a good point, I think.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair for that question and also for this explanation. Najam, any insights from your side?
As far as I understand, Afaq is anything that's not Anfus, and Anfus is the self. Now, how big the self is and where the borders are between Anfus and Afaq, I don't know, because that's another issue. I don't want to muddy the water and make things more complex than they need be. So I think basically we can say that the human ana and the nafs is the anfus, and everything other than that is afaq. But again, that's just a very broad brush general interpretation. But I think the questioner had the right idea.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we have about a few minutes left. So inshallah, I will read through 4th section, and if we have maybe final thoughts after that, we will, of course, next week we will continue reading it again, probably starting with the 4th section, and then we'll continue from that. But again, inshallah, I will read through it, and then if we have final comments, I will take them. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 4th section. His art in the former displays it as a book, while his coloring in the latter shines through speech. Its meaning is this: the glorious maker's art in the macrocosm is so meaningful that because it is manifested in the form of a book, thus making the universe into a huge volume, the human intellect has extracted the library of true natural science and philosophy from it, and has written the library accordingly. And that book of wisdom is bound to reality and draws assistance from reality to such a degree that it has been proclaimed in the form of the all-wise Quran, which is a copy of that huge manifested book. Moreover, just as his art in the universe is in the form of a book, describing its perfect orderedness, so too his coloring and inscription of his wisdom in man has opened the flower of speech. That is, his art is so meaningful, sensitive, and beautiful that it has caused the components of that animate machine to speak, as though they were gramophones. It has given man such a lordly coloring in his fairest of forms that the flower of speech and expression, which is immaterial, insubstantial, and living, has opened in his material, corporeal, and solid head. And it has equipped the power of speech and expression, which is situated in man's head, with such exalted tools and abilities that it has caused it to develop and progress to a degree whereat he becomes the addressee of the pre-eternal monarch. That is, the lordly coloring in man's essential nature has opened the flower of divine address. Is it at all possible that anything other than the single one of unity could interfere in that art in creatures which is so high as to be in the form of a book, and in that coloring in man, whereby he attains to the station of speech and address? Allah forbid. This was the section. Again, we will not really have time to go deep in this, which is by itself, the book of the universe and the faculty of speech in human being is definitely worth hours of talk. But if there's any final thoughts or very quick thoughts on this, we can share them, and then after that, we can inshallah farewell to our guest. And actually, brother Mustafa had to step out, so maybe Kulnabi, do you have any thoughts, maybe final remarks as well about this?
I don't have any thoughts on what you've just read. I think we would need to read it again next week if this topic continues.
Okay, inshallah. Any other final thoughts from any of our guests? If not, maybe we can finish with a dua. Brother Ali, would you like to make a dua for us?
Yes. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم ارزقنا حبك وحب ما يقربنا إليك اللهم لا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا اللهم زدنا علما ونورا وحلما وآتنا نعمة ظاهرة ونعمة باطنة يا محول الحول والأحوال حول حالنا إلى أحسن الحال ربنا آمنا بما أنزلت واتبعنا الرسول فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين اللهم بحق سورة الإخلاص اجعلنا من عبادك المخلصين المخلصين آمين لله